Hi and welcome. I am here with Patrick Eilers, and he's a counselor to give us some advice and to talk to us on a very sensitive subject. And I want to put a disclaimer here. If you're with kids in the car, we're going to be talking about some issues that are adult issues that we need to discuss. So I just want to give that to you as a heads up. What we're talking about today is some of the aftermath from sexual addiction and also from incest that happens sometimes in families. And while it's really unfortunate, it leaves scars and it leaves a lasting effect. And Patrick has a background in sexual addiction and helping people overcome these very issues. And we've asked him to join us today to help us understand how sometimes things that we don't plan on in our lives happen to us, and then we smother ourselves with stuff and it looks like clutter and hoarding in our lives. And if we can start to peel away the onion and we can look at the layers beneath what's actually going on, it might actually help us either to understand others that are going through a similar situation, or maybe it will give us some insights into trauma that maybe we've never actually looked at. So please help me welcome Patrick Eilers.
Thank you, Angela. I appreciate being here.
So tell us a little bit about intention. How do we wake up one day and say, wait a second, I am worthy of being intentional of my choices?
I don't know if you wake up and do it. It'd be nice if we did. I think all of us would probably be happy if we was just to do that. But yeah, intention is a tough one from the perspective of how to do it, how to practice it. It's something, right? A lot of these things we're talking about, a lot of it's practice. And that's one of the things I think as adults and as just as human beings, we want things to just be natural. We want things to be organic. And so a lot of the times when we do things that are organic, it's a little bit impulsive at times, especially if they're unhealthy things. But our brains are designed to do the same thing over and over again. And why that's significant is because the things that are healthy or the things that are unhealthy, once we start to do them, they become our routine. So years ago, they did that. There was a documentary where the guy did the ate McDonald's for 30 days straight. So day one, he has to be very intentional because he's thinking about going to eat McDonald's. Okay, I'm going to go and go 3 meals a day and get my McDonald's. By day 25, it's impulsive, right? And I'm not saying that was exactly the way it was, but something similar to that, right? He could just go to McDonald's, doesn't even think about it. Part of that's the brain. Again, it streamlines itself in that sense. So practicing intentionality comes from a place of, okay, this is what my impulse or my natural ability should just go and do this. So let me just take a moment and how would I do this differently? So you think about this, okay, what choice can I make differently here? So I think about food because it's a pretty easy one for most everyone to relate to. So my impulse is to go home and make a pizza because it's easy. Because it's going to be something I control in the oven. It's going to take me 20 minutes. I'll be good to go. But if I make my whatever it might be, right? Something I have to cook and I have to write the instructions down. I have to read the recipe and I have to do all those things. That's very intentional. It's very step by step. It breaks up the sort of just organic response. So I think it's important when we're practicing intentionality is that that's something that we just every day we can do that. Every day, it doesn't matter what we do, we can choose to practice that. But how are we breaking those steps down? So if we have a goal, what's our goal? For today is to run half a mile. Okay, how are we going to do that? Well, we're going to visualize going to put our running shoes on and we're going to go out the door and we're going to maybe start out just walking or jogging, then we running for a little while and then we just ran half a mile. Right. So it's kind of building up to it. Like, and how are we putting those choices in front of us in order for us to be able to think about what we're going to do rather than just impulsively respond to it?
Well, and I'm glad that you brought that up because what I hear you saying is if we want different results, we have to do different things. And I know for me, I found myself sick and tired of being sick and tired. And it was just doing too much commitment on my plate, being kind of burned out. And I wanted radically different results. And I said to myself, what do I have to do if I want radically different results? Well, the answer is I have to do radically different things. I can't keep doing the same old, hoping for different results. That's just
Absolutely.
foolishness. And so, what can I do? And I literally flipped the script. I said, what is exactly opposite from what I'm doing right now? Because what I was doing was not working.
Mhm.
And I had nothing to lose because what I was doing was not working. So
Yeah.
it is a moment where you say, wait a second, I am worthy. I deserve a really happy life that's clutter free, that is healthy, that has healthy relationships, that has full of social interaction. And the social interaction I want to stop on for a second because I get really caught up in my business and it's easy to say, oh, I don't have time to go to events. And I say no to a lot of activities where friends invite me out and things like that. And there's a woman in my neighborhood who said, I want to get to know you better. I was like, yeah, I don't have time for friends. And she says, I will meet you at the clubhouse on Saturday morning at 7 o'clock. And let's go walking around the neighborhood because I know you exercise. I was like,
Yeah.
oh. And so she went out of her way to be my friend. And I was like, you know what? That's radically different than what I was doing before. So building in with our regular busy schedules and our hectic lifestyles, building in those small changes that will give us radically different results because they're radically different things,
Mhm.
right? Different
Yep.
things than what we're doing. And
Absolutely.
I just joined a gym. And what I did, it was really interesting because they have a private, it's like a family locker room, which is normally where I would go just to get away from everyone, just clear my head. And then there's like the social locker room where everyone hangs out. And I forced myself to go to the social locker room. And then I forced myself to learn everybody's names. I know this is
Mhm.
really but it was so different for me because where I'm in a hurry, get out of the pool, run in, change my clothes, and be gone. I force myself now to put my makeup on at the gym and to say hi and to get to know everybody that's there. And what's really interesting is this: it didn't cost me any extra money to make friends. But the one morning that I missed the gym, somebody texted me and said, "Are you okay? I noticed you weren't at the gym today." And you talk about bringing that wall down. There
Mhm.
are little tiny steps that we can make in our life, even if we're not ready to go to a therapist yet, even if we're not ready to look at the darker side of what we've been telling ourselves over and over on those tapes. If we're willing to just lower that fence just a little bit. And for me, it was learning the names of the people at the wall. It doesn't seem like a big thing, but it's a small step in that
Mhm.
direction. And I think if we will start and we will make commitments to ourselves to get radically different results from our lives by doing radically different things, I want to encourage everybody to start today and to pick a couple elements in your life that could be a beginning of a change. Because what I'm hearing Patrick say today is you don't have to make all the changes today, but you
Mhm.
can start heading in that direction. And I know for me, we talked a little bit about forgiveness. Forgiveness has been very hard for me over my life because I'm a control freak. And I like to say I was right and someone else was wrong, right? Not healthy, but that's who I am.
Yeah.
And I know that I had a sister who married my fiance. And talk about betrayal. I felt
Mm.
so angry and so betrayed. And in my mind, I wanted to forgive her, but I didn't know how. I didn't know what forgiveness was. I didn't know how to do that. And as I was trying to be intentional, I said to myself, what if I could just imagine myself giving her a hug? And I couldn't. I could not picture it to save my life. I could not. And it took years before, and I kept walking myself through it. She's going to walk into the room at a family reunion, and I'm going to get up and I'm going to go over and give her a really honest to goodness hug like I mean it. I could not do it. Every time I would see her at a family reunion, I would get up and I would leave the room and I would go out the other door. I do not want to be in the same room as her. I was holding on to that because somehow, if I was in control, that made me strong. No, it does not make me strong. It was bitter and it made me angry and it made me hate myself and her. It was not healthy at all.
Yep.
And if I admit, like what Patrick is telling us today, I admit that I'm worthy of love and I'm worthy of a healthy relationships, you have to be willing to be hurt. People can hurt you again and again and again. And I kept going through this over and over and over in my mind until the moment came where we were at a family reunion and I saw her walk in. I'm like, go for it. Go for it. This is the moment where you get up and you go give her a hug for honest. You mean this, right? And I did. I got up and I went and I gave her a really big hug. And she looked at me like, why did you hug me? I don't deserve this. And she was holding these hard feelings as well. And we had a conversation later. She said, is it possible we could be friends again? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know what that looks like, but I'm willing to give it a try. Could she hurt me again? Yes, it's very possible. And she probably will. She's my sister, so she probably will hurt me
Yep.
again. But I'm willing to give it a try. And I love the fact that Patrick came on here today and is giving us some tools where we can give it a try. What do you think?
One of the things that stood out to me, and you mentioned it earlier when you're talking about just the fact of giving it a try, and I think basically across the board, if this is true for everybody, right? This is true for all humanity, all human beings. And it's a line from a song by a group called Swishfoot, and it's something that I'll think about a lot when I think about second chances. And the verse of the line is every breath is a second chance. And I think that's really significant when we talk about forgiveness. If you talk about moving forward from pains, whatever it might be, grief. I think that was something we didn't even touch on today, but throughout all this is kind of interwoven. When we choose something, we have to grieve letting the other thing go. And that was something I was going to talk about specifically with clutter in our lives. Like we have to let the other things go. I found that to be very profound when I was learning about just this whole program that we're part of here. We have to grieve the things that we're going to let go, things we're not going to choose. So, and that part of that forgiveness is that we can't try to have, and we're talking about clutter in our lives, and we try to have both things at the same time. We all have a relationship with everything in our life, whether it be an item, a person, whatever the choices are, we have a relationship with that thing, so to speak, that choice. And because we choose something else, or if we choose something else, we have to grieve letting that other thing go, whatever that might be. So even something simple like, hey, I'm going to choose Coke over Sprite today at the store. I have to grieve letting go whatever one I didn't choose. And I think on a bigger scale, that's something that we see when it comes to relationships, where it comes to we lose a loved one or lose what, and those that grief is huge. Like, it's a big part of that, and that can't be something that drives us to drop our anchor, so to speak, and stay there. We have to allow that to be something that's going to move us closer toward the person we want to be. And so our phrase I think about too is turn our wounds into wisdom. And so how do we take the things that have been the pains, the wounds, the hurts, maybe in some cases like you shared, Angela, the lack of or the struggle of forgiveness, those kind of things. How do we allow those things to become sort of our vision for who we are and who we're going to be the best person that we're going to be? And we're not going to be perfect, but can we live in a state of excellence? Meaning that we're going to be the best person we can to be today. We're going to be the best person we can be tomorrow. We'll be the best person after that. And so in those days, or every day might feel like it's a struggle to some degree, but can we get to a part where we're happy with who we are, where we see our worthiness, we see our value as a person. And so embracing that, even though these things have been hard, they've made us who we are. And they've helped us become the person we like to be.
Well, I love that. I love that because it gives us permission to be human. And I think that's really important distinction. Nobody's perfect. We're all going to make mistakes and we're all human, but we're all, and Patrick just made a really, really interesting point. He said, are you going to drop an anchor and stay stuck there, or are you going to keep moving through? And I think that is really important because if you are going to get from point A to point B, you have to keep moving through. To drop the anchor and to get stuck and to stay there for forever doesn't make progress. It just leaves you stuck in one space. And I love the fact that life is constantly moving. And Patrick said something earlier about he didn't use the word domino effect, but what he was talking about was a domino effect. If you do something and it has another effect, which has another effect. And I think it's really important. What dominoes can you pull out of the lineup and tweak those little behaviors or those little frustrations that we have? Or maybe it's a glitch that's made us rise that fence to the point where all you see is our eyes and we feel safe behind our little wall. Is there something we can pull out of that lineup and tweak just a little bit so that it's not starting a domino effect on a journey we don't want to go on? Can we stop the process right now and say, hey, I am worthy. I do deserve something better. And I love, love, love the fact that Patrick just said, can we be the best versions of ourselves on this journey through life? And I think that's so important because we get a new second chance every breath, every day. This is life. This is what we're doing right now. And so to show up every single day and say, hey, is this my best? When I was a little kid, my dad asked us and encouraged us, are you doing something right now? Yes, we are. Can you do it any better? And I loved that because it really forces me to stop every day and say, hey, what am I doing today? And can I do it any better? And that's what Patrick has shared with us today is that we deserve that. I love this conversation and I appreciate you joining us here today. Patrick, will you tell our listeners where they can go to find you and your practice?
Yep, absolutely. The practice website is northpoint-counseling.com. We specialize in sex addiction, partner trauma. That's what we do here. So if you're interested in checking us out, that's where you get from the website there. My personal Instagram is rated_PGE. My email is Patrick Eilers, my name, .we, like we, at gmail.com. So that's my personal email. I also have a LinkedIn account. It's just my name and has my credentials and some of the other things I've been part of on there. So those are probably the best ways to get a hold of me if you want to get in touch with me directly.
And I will put links in the show notes too, though, so that you guys can get in touch with Patrick. But I really appreciate Patrick being willing to have some of those hard conversations with us as we work through our journey of humanity. And we have some of those tough conversations that are those honest conversations that are going to keep us moving from point A to point B in our journey. So thank you very much.
Yep. Thanks, Angela. Really appreciate it.